Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's update on New Brunswick's return to school plans. Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à cette mise à jour sur le sujet du plan de retour à l'école pour le Nouveau-Brunswick. Les porte-paroles aujourd'hui sont les sous-ministres du ministère de l'Éducation et Développement de la petite enfance, Marcel Lavoie pour le secteur francophone et George Daley pour le secteur anglophone. Speaking on behalf of the province today are the Deputy Ministers of Education, George Daley for the Anglophone sector, and Marcel Lavoie for the Francophone sector. Marcel?
Merci, Daniel, et bon après-midi à tous. Et merci d'être présents à ce point de presse. Mardi prochain, c'est un jour important. L'ensemble des jeunes rentrent à nouveau ou retournent sur les bancs d'école après 6 mois d'absence. Comme nous l'avons annoncé, on prévoit une rentrée progressive. Ça veut dire que durant la prochaine semaine, les enseignants vont prendre le temps d'orienter, de guider, d'expliquer, de prendre le temps de donner une chance aux élèves d'apprivoiser l'environnement et de se préparer à vivre une année dans une école qui est un peu différente de celle qu'ils ont connue dans le passé. Le personnel des écoles est fébrile et a certainement hâte d'accueillir vos enfants. Celui-ci est prêt à amorcer l'année scolaire, même si celle-ci sera différente des années passées. Les écoles, les districts et le ministère, en collaboration avec Santé publique et Travail sécuritaire Nouveau-Brunswick, ont travaillé au cours des derniers mois à préparer un environnement qui sera sécuritaire pour vos enfants et en même temps qui sera prêt pour faire en sorte que vos élèves, vos enfants apprennent et qu'ils vivent du succès à l'école. Nous remercions spécialement le personnel des écoles qui, au cours des dernières semaines, a fait preuve d'innovation, de créativité afin de préparer un environnement qui suit les lignes directrices qui ont été données par le ministère et Santé publique. Il y a tout un travail qui s'est fait là et il faut le reconnaître. Chaque école avait le devoir d'établir un plan opérationnel pour la prochaine année scolaire qui servira à assurer un environnement sécuritaire pour l'ensemble de la communauté de l'école. Ces plans devraient être publiés aujourd'hui. Nous encourageons les parents à aller sur le site web des écoles et d'aller prendre connaissance du contenu de ces plans-là. D'un, ça devrait vous aider à vous préparer, à donner de l'information à vos enfants, mais aussi de voir le sérieux qui a été mis derrière ces plans et de reconnaître que les écoles ont fait le travail nécessaire pour être prêts à la rentrée la semaine prochaine. Une liste de vérification présentée sous forme d'infographie a été spécialement créée pour aider les parents et les enfants à vivre un départ positif de la maison vers l'école. Cette liste de vérification est disponible sur notre site Web. Nous vous encourageons à l'imprimer et à le placer dans un endroit visible à la maison. Notamment, cette liste-là vous indiquera que vos enfants doivent partir tous les matins avec 2 masques propres dans un contenant en plastique ou une enveloppe ou ainsi de suite, et aussi de faire le dépistage nécessaire à partir des symptômes qui ont été établis par Santé publique. Malgré tout le travail de planification effectué pour le transport scolaire, vous devriez prévoir qu'il y aura des imprévus. Étant donné que les parents se sont avancés pour ramener eux-mêmes leurs enfants à l'école cette année, il faut s'attendre que la circulation sera plus lourde et plus au ralenti au cours des prochains jours. Donc, on vous demande de prévoir ça. En toute évidence, le personnel enseignant utilisera les premières semaines pour enseigner les consignes de santé et de sécurité aux élèves. On profitera également de ces moments pour développer une culture citoyenne, que chacun de nous a un rôle à jouer comme néo-brunswickoises et néo-brunswickois pour faire en sorte que les gens de la province soient en sécurité à travers cette pandémie. Et oui, vos jeunes, vos enfants ne vont pas devenir citoyens, ils le sont déjà. Et on invite tous les élèves de faire partie de ce projet d'essayer de garder l'ensemble de la province en santé. Nous profitons également de la tribune aujourd'hui pour inviter les parents et la communauté à se joindre à nous. Nous devons faire face à la pandémie ensemble. L'heure n'est pas au débat ou aux prises de décision opposées. Le moment est venu, plus que jamais. Nous devons tous collaborer et accepter que l'école, que nous avons tous connue, soit différente pour qu'elle puisse accueillir les jeunes en toute sécurité. Vos enfants vous observent. Ils apprennent de vous. Vos paroles, vos gestes, vos inquiétudes ont un impact direct sur vos enfants et sur leur habilité à s'adapter aux changements. Ce n'est pas le moment de juger, ce n'est pas le moment de critiquer. Soyez patients et soyez indulgents avec le personnel des écoles et des districts scolaires. Pensons aux autres et prenons conscience que nous faisons partie d'une plus grande famille, celle de la communauté du Nouveau-Brunswick. C'est tout à fait normal qu'une partie des parents de la communauté conteste les mesures de sécurité que nous avons établies. Nous tenons à le dire encore, notre plan n'est pas parfait. Il est fondé, nous avons fait du mieux qu'on peut avec l'information qu'on a reçue, mais nous sommes confiants que l'environnement de l'école sera sécuritaire. Nous reconnaissons aussi que nos mesures ne s'étendent pas à l'extérieur des heures de l'école et que nous ne contrôlons pas les comportements des jeunes le soir et la fin de semaine. On pourrait facilement se demander à quoi valent les procédures ou les protocoles qu'on a mis en place. Je vous invite à regarder les choses peut-être d'une autre façon. Nonobstant cette réalité, 100 000 élèves et 20 000 du personnel enseignant entrent à chaque jour dans nos écoles. 120 000, c'est 1/6 de la population entière de la province. Donc, 1/6 de la province, de la population de la province entre dans nos écoles à chaque jour. On ne peut pas faire autrement que tirer la conclusion que l'école peut jouer un rôle pour diminuer les risques de propagation dans la province. Lorsque vos enfants partiront le matin avec 2 masques avec eux et le porteront au moment propice, ils vont jouer un rôle pour aider à diminuer les risques, pour faire en sorte que l'ensemble de la communauté de la province soit en sécurité. La rentrée sera un moment important de stress et d'anxiété pour tous. Continuez de vous informer. Prenez connaissance du plan opérationnel de votre école et consultez nos plans de retour à l'école. Vous pouvez également accéder aux différents points de presse sur YouTube provenant de la santé publique et du ministère. Il faut aussi reconnaître que les problèmes de santé mentale chez les élèves demeurent une préoccupation pour tous. Le personnel des écoles est très conscient de cette réalité et de la fragilité des élèves. Des services pour appuyer les élèves sont disponibles et nous vous invitons, les parents et les jeunes, à en prendre connaissance et y accéder. Vous n'êtes pas seul et vous n'avez pas à vivre ces défis seuls. Au-delà de tout ça, la prochaine année scolaire se passera bien. Nous en sommes confiants. Nous sommes sûrs que tout est en place pour que les élèves vivent une année scolaire positive, comblée de succès. Les enseignants sont prêts. Les équipes d'appui dans les écoles sont en place pour que le retour aux apprentissages se passe bien. Je termine en rappelant des comportements simples qui font une grande différence. Lavons-nous les mains régulièrement, portons un masque aux endroits appropriés, prenons soin de nous et demeurons en santé. Merci de votre écoute.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us online again. On March 4th, our office began a very serious work at examining the COVID spread throughout Europe, its beginning within North America, along with its potential effect on our schools, with many of our students traveling. Since that date, we've asked some students who were on March break European trips to self-isolate. We temporarily closed the school system. We closed the early learning centers, closed the entire K-12 system. Then we opened emergency early learning centers, followed by a full reopening of the early learning system. Next Tuesday is the final step in this cycle where the K-12 system will officially welcome students back to our buildings to once again begin face-to-face learning with our staffs and their classmates. We know from many parents and children that this date has caused concern and anxiety. Our teams at EECD, districts, and within other government agencies and departments as a whole were aware and are aware of this, and we are fully cognizant of those feelings. We focused all our efforts on this day as a major milestone, and we've worked hard to get the system ready. Next week, we will see a gradual and staggered return of our students into each building to allow staffs more one-on-one time with each child. It will help them lower their anxiety from the first day, along with ensuring that they are adequately informed and supported in the understanding of the new safety protocols that will be part of their everyday school life. We also know that for some school staffs, they are also experiencing some general concern and anxiety. I want them all to know that we have worked closely with Public Health and WorkSafe NB over recent months, and that we are committed to continuing to do so to offer as safe of a school environment as we can. I want to thank all the syndical groups for their communication and working relationships throughout the pandemic response. We really have gotten here together. Even with anxiety, we know staff are looking forward to welcoming their children back to their classes and their school families. As I personally move through the work, there have been moments during this time that I will remember forever. And one certainly was when teachers came back in June and were posting pictures of their empty classrooms and missing their kids. Yes, Tuesday will have concern, it will have anxiety, but I also know there will be a lot of joy. You may know in my former role as MBTA and MBTF president that I built vast connections with teachers across the province. I had the unique privilege of being able to visit every single Anglophone school in my time as president. I know from firsthand experience that our schools have staffs who are creative, adaptive, innovative, and caring. I know they will be up to the task for caring for and educating our youth within the new safety measures and guidelines established by EECD and Public Health. We also know that parents, while anticipating their child's return to school, are also experiencing concern and anxiety. I have had countless individual calls with parents to respond to their questions, concerns, and to help try to quell that overall anxiety. We know we are dealing with your children, and there is nothing more important in your lives. Further, we realize quite honestly that there is no more important part to the future of our province than our children. To help parents further prepare their children for a positive start, we've developed an infographic checklist. It is available on our website, and we encourage you to print it and post it in your homes. Also, as we've indicated previously, today marks the release date of the operational plans for all of our schools. The plans have been developed to help ensure a safe environment for the entire school community within each school. Parents should be able to locate these plans on their respective school websites. In addition, during the first weeks, school teachers will continue to explain health and safety guidelines to students, and we will also use these moments to help develop good citizen culture. To this point, I want to specifically call on our students and our student leaders. 20+ years in New Brunswick schools, I know the great young leaders that we have. Students, we've worked hard to try to offer you as many opportunities as we can in a safe situation, but we need you to help set the examples and follow public health recommendations so we can stay in yellow. I also want to acknowledge the comments that I've read that our bubble and groupings will not protect students outside of schools. They are 100% correct. We, inside the system, can only do our best to make schools safe. We absolutely need parents and students to follow all public health recommendations outside of the school if we are going to be successful. We must all remember the role that each of us has to play as in New Brunswick, helping to ensure that our province continues its successful response to this pandemic. This is essential to help protect our full education system. Since this is our last press conference before school reopens, here are a few quick reminders. Education will continue full-time even if we experience any type of outbreak shutdown. High school students will learn every day, even if it's at home. Don't forget to bring 2 masks every day in a plastic box or bag. And finally, so important, parents, teachers, and all school staff, please self-screen every morning. If you're sick, stay home. As I close today, I have 2 final topics: giving thanks and being kind. First, the thanks. 1 year ago, I was sitting in my school administration meeting preparing to navigate some difficult school issues. A little shout out to my BHS family. I know you guys got this. I never imagined that I'd be standing here in this role, and certainly not in the middle of a pandemic. I started this role on November 12th, expecting a steep learning curve, but never imagining what we'd face in the recent months. We live in a time, for some reason, that many first responses are negative towards those who work for the public service. Being a newbie, I think it is important that everyone know the extreme dedication that I have witnessed from all the staffs with whom I've interacted. Our EECD team, both education and early childhood, have put in an effort that I do not have the words to adequately express. My respect and thanks to them all. Further, so many other departments, while navigating their own issues, have placed education system as a top priority with health. Not once did I make a call, did I not find immediate support. And I want to thank all of those departments for that. I specifically want to recognize our civil service leader, our clerk, and the Deputy Minister of Finance and Treasury, Cheryl Hansen. Without her leadership, I am not sure that we would be prepared. And lastly, kindness. Earlier this week, I was saddened to see a post by the Bathurst City Police of the passing of longtime officer and former Deputy Chief Bernie Allain. Bernie was a large, powerful man who was full of respect and kindness. His support of my school and students was unwavering in my full career. My condolences to his family and his colleagues. As police officers, some issues certainly are challenging, but he was a true gentleman in all the interactions that I have ever witnessed him take part in. His passing made me reflect on where we are currently in this pandemic response and in society in general. I think we can all agree that social media and news report comment boxes have not been an advancement in positive humankind interactions. When I was a school administrator in settling online disputes between students, I always asked, if you had said in front of someone and looked in their eyes, would you have said the same comment that you typed? In almost every case, students would say no. I think we all have something to learn from the students. Tuesday marks the start of a new school year like none we've ever experienced. It will cause challenges and bumps that we may not have anticipated. We will do our best with the right intentions to protect and educate your children. When I travel, one comment that I hear about New Brunswick is always the warmth of the population. To end today, I'm asking all New Brunswickers to set the example for our students and children. We will all need to be extra flexible, extra caring, and extra understanding whenever issues arise. The greatest lesson for our youth that we take for the future is not what they're going to learn in class, but what our actions and words teach them about how we reacted and dealt with day-to-day challenges in the midst of a global pandemic. Thank you, and we'll now take questions from media.
Thank you, George. We'll now proceed to questions from the media. Each reporter will have one question and a follow-up. You can pose your question in the language of your choice. Nous allons maintenant procéder aux questions des journalistes. Chaque journaliste aura une question puis une suivie. Vous pouvez poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix. Mia Urquhart, CBC. Your first question, please.
Thank you. How many students will be using alternate learning spaces in order to access the internet during their at-home sessions?
I'm sorry, Mia, I don't have that answer. Schools are just rolling out those operational plans today. And as students are starting to arrive next week, they'll be working with the staggered entries and having those conversations with individual students. So that will probably take us a bit of time to be able to gather that full amount of data.
Thank you, George. Marcel?
Oui, on n'a pas déjà ces données-là, mais ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est qu'au cours de la première semaine, même des 2 premières semaines, c'est là que les jeunes vont se brancher, puis c'est là qu'on va s'apercevoir, ou on va pouvoir mesurer si ça marche ou si ça ne marche pas pour certains. Puis à ce moment-là, il faudra peut-être avoir des mesures de rechange pour ces élèves-là.
Merci, Marcel. Mia, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. What's your advice for parents of high school students who will be learning from home part of the time? How can they help their children make the most of blended learning?
I think it's the same as any year, Mia. It's important to stay connected to your school, stay connected to the teachers. I suspect that there will be some different approaches from different teachers, and that communication between home and school is always key. Understanding that it's going to take a couple of weeks to kind of get into particular routines, but also talk to your kids. I don't know that we always talk to our kids enough, and I think the students are going to adapt well to this, but it's important, at the end of the day, to question them. How are things working? How are things going? And if you've got particular issues, follow that up with your school administrator and your classroom teacher.
Thank you, George. Marcel?
Oui, c'est une excellente question. Un peu comme mon homologue vient de dire, je pense que c'est le moment d'avoir un dialogue continu avec l'école, avec vos jeunes. C'est surtout important, je pense, de profiter du moment pour que ce soit un moment d'éducation aussi pour eux. C'est le moment à eux, pour eux de développer des stratégies et pour gérer eux-mêmes, puis d'être un peu plus autonomes par rapport à la gestion de leur horaire, puis de ce qu'ils font avec les objectifs d'apprentissage qu'ils ont. Fait que être là pour les encourager, leur poser des questions par rapport à comment ça va, plutôt que de leur dire qu'est-ce qu'ils doivent faire, puis de les guider dans des réponses pour que ça aille mieux. Merci.
Merci, Marcel. Thank you, Mia. Meg Cunningham, CHMA. Your first question, please.
Hi there, my question is about EAs. With no additional EAs being hired this year, will teachers be given extra training in the event of increased behavioral issues as this is a stressful time?
I think there's thanks for the question, Meg. I think there's a couple of significant points that we have to remember. First of all, we have reduced class sizes in K-2 and from 3 to 5. We have not reduced the number of EAs in the system, so we are actually going to have better teacher-to-student ratios in the past to allow for that extra interaction. At the high school level, we continue to have the same number of EAs, and understanding that we will not have, in most schools, half the population in the buildings every second day. So that is going to also increase time for individual contact.
Thank you, George. Meg, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Marco Casadar, Radio-Canada, votre première question, s'il vous plaît.
Ma première question est sur le port du masque. Qu'allez-vous faire? Est-ce qu'il y a des directives si un élève arrive sans masque à l'école? Dans ce cas-là, ce ne serait pas un oubli, mais que les parents refusent que leur enfant porte un masque.
Merci pour la question. Le message, premièrement, devrait aller aux parents, d'essayer de voir le côté positif que leurs jeunes peuvent contribuer à l'environnement de l'école, mais aussi à l'environnement de la communauté en jouant leur rôle correctement et en suivant les directives. Si un enfant se présente à l'école ou même à l'autobus sans masque la première fois, c'est sûr qu'on va avoir des masques jetables qui vont être disponibles pour eux. L'idée ici, c'est pas que les élèves manquent des jours de classe à cause du port de masque. L'idée, c'est qu'on adopte tous des comportements qui protègent la grande majorité des gens. Donc, rendu à l'école, si le problème persiste, bien, ce sera comme d'autres problèmes de comportement qu'on a à tous les jours. Les directions d'école et le personnel de l'école vont voir collaborer avec les parents pour trouver des solutions.
Merci, Marcel. George?
Thank you. And the question was, how are we going to handle situations where students arrive at school and do not have masks or refuse to wear masks? Remember, at the lower levels, we are encouraging mask use, so we will continue to encourage it. We will continue to have those conversations with students, understanding that the little children have a different capacity level to understand the importance of it, so it's a little more challenging. At the older level, the masks are mandatory in particular times and locations in the school, and those free times and transitions. I do not see that any different than how we have dealt with it in the public. If you are looking to go into a store that is required to have a mask, you are required to have a mask to go into that store. So in the school system, we will deal with it as normal issues, that the first conversations will be with the child and encourage it. It could just be a forgetful child. The second stage will be conversations with the parents, and if it gets to an issue of complete refusal, we will have to take steps at that point that may involve removal from school if that is the situation. We must remember that public health has indicated that we should be wearing masks. This is not something that we are putting up for a debate, and I hope that we are going to get full buy-in and participation from the public on this and those that are attending the public school system.
Thank you, George. Marco, avez-vous une suivi sur...
Oui, ça sera concernant le transport scolaire. Vous avez mentionné qu'il faudra s'attendre à peut-être des retards et de la flexibilité de la part des parents. Est-ce que vous pouvez un petit peu élaborer? Est-ce qu'on doit s'attendre à que ça marche, que le transport scolaire marche pas très bien?
C'est pas nécessairement le transport scolaire qui ne marchera pas. Je pense qu'à chaque année, c'est normal que on est en train d'essayer de régler les derniers ajustements. C'est tout à fait normal qu'il y ait des petits pépins à certains endroits, mais la majorité du temps, les choses sont bien installées. Là, par exemple, cette semaine, on a certains problèmes avec le logiciel qui informe habituellement les parents des points les points d'arrêt des autobus. Puis là, on a des difficultés. On travaille fort avec l'entreprise qui est responsable du logiciel pour réparer les problèmes avec le logiciel. On demande aux parents de réessayer à nouveau parce que je pense que le problème est comme une fois sur 100. Fait que si on réessaye, généralement, ça devrait marcher la seconde ou la troisième fois. C'est plutôt par rapport à la circulation. Puis on parle probablement davantage des écoles qui sont en milieu urbain où est-ce qu'il y a une grande concentration de circulation déjà. Donc, avec la circulation accrue des parents, on peut s'attendre qu'il va y avoir un volume assez intense autour des écoles. Puis, généralement, ce genre de choses-là arrive durant les premières journées d'école. Ça ne devrait pas nécessairement être si grave que ça parce qu'on a une rentrée progressive. On espère que juste de ce côté-là, ça va aider à gérer, si on veut, le volume. Mais c'est plus une mise en garde que d'autres choses.
Merci, Marcel. Merci, Marco. Elizabeth Fraser, CBC, your first question, please.
Hi there. Education Minister Dominic Carty was very excited earlier this summer about high school students getting a combination of online learning and co-op programs on the days when they aren't scheduled to be inside a school building. Can you describe what has been set up so far in the way of co-op programs?
A couple of parts there. We did have a lot of conversations about could we and would we look at some type of alternate scheduling format at high school. We've decided to stay away from that as a whole and schedule the every second day. That allows us the opportunity that if a vaccine was to arrive, that we could pretty seamlessly bring our classes all back to full sizes. What we have suggested in our conversations with school principals earlier in August, that if they had cohorts of students that they wanted to go into experiential learning opportunities, that perhaps they could affix those students to almost a secondary schedule so they would not get caught into a situation. We have done a lot of work on trying to advance virtual co-op opportunities. As the system gets back, we're going to be sharing some of those things. The current co-op model is still in place where students will be allowed to go to work at job sites. We know different districts have taken somewhat slightly different approaches as to when they're going to allow them to start or not, understanding that students who would be going out in the workplace it would have to be done safely and respecting all the public health protocols. So it's to take what was currently there to enable it and to expand those opportunities. Does that suffice a little bit? Yep, good.
Thank you, George. Marcel?
Merci pour la question. Du côté francophone, la question ce qu'on appelle le projet de vie carrière est centrale à notre plan éducatif depuis les dernières années. L'idée de pouvoir permettre aux élèves de vivre des expériences en milieu de travail est fondamentale par rapport à notre projet. Donc, en toute évidence, on est en train d'y travailler. Par contre, on est dans le milieu d'une pandémie, ce n'était pas prévu dans nos plans. Ce qui fait qu'on travaille actuellement avec les autres ministères On a eu déjà plusieurs rencontres à ce sujet-là, puis on va continuer d'en avoir pour voir comment on va réussir à travailler avec le secteur de l'emploi et le secteur privé pour être en mesure de fournir des endroits qui sont sécuritaires. Mais on est confiant qu'on devrait être capable d'y arriver. On ne va juste pas commencer l'année avec ça. On va commencer l'année avec des choses un peu plus régulières, puis on va travailler au cours des premiers mois pour ouvrir les portes et faire en sorte qu'on est capable d'établir ce genre de collaboration avec le secteur privé.
Merci, Marcel. Elizabeth, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I'm wondering if you can also elaborate on the disinfecting of desks and chairs that you expect students in grades 6 and up to do. And how will you ensure it's consistently and properly done?
Elizabeth, I'd refer you to our full plan that's online that has all the specifics around cleaning. We have expectations and protocols in place for the custodial staff, and the expectations for teachers and students at the start of end of periods are there. So it's probably best because there's a little more technicality for you to get the answers there.
Okay.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Elizabeth. Savannah Ott, Telegraph Journal. Your first question, please.
Hi there. So with the operational plans for each school finalized, I appreciate maybe the full agreement or details hasn't been worked out, but do you have a broad sense at this point of where schools will need to use that recently announced federal funding? Any sort of broad issues that you feel will need support funding from the federal government?
The operational plans that school administrators would have put together would have been based off the funding and resources that we have already announced and that we've shared with you in previous press conferences and releases. So the federal government announcement of the new $40 million would not be affecting those individual plans. Those plans do go into the specific details of the operational level of each individual school. So there's going to be variances there in line with the shape, size, demographics of each one of the buildings. So there will be a lot of specifics there, and they should be available on the website.
Thank you, George. Savannah, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I just want to quickly clarify, though. Is there a sense of where that federal funding will need to go at this point, or no?
We're probably not going to spend $40 million this week. We have already shared where we were putting our investments into the system. We continue and we will be having further conversations with the federal government and the officials as to the parameters of where those funds can go. The province has made a significant investment, as we've shared previously, to ensure that we can open up our schools safely. So I would suspect in the coming weeks we'll be able to address that more specifically.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Savannah. Kaylin
Sorry,
Smith, Global News.
I just wanted...
Oh,
sorry,
that was
I
two
did have a
questions.
follow-up. I just had wanted to clarify, like the first one I just had asked. It was just a clarification because it wasn't answered the first time, but I don't know if we have time. But
Sure.
okay. Sorry. Just on a separate note. Given that flu season will be in the mix with back to school and COVID, is there any plan in the works at this point to work with health to provide, I guess, in-school clinics or something similar for students to get the flu shot? Any additional efforts to sort of reduce those similar symptoms in classrooms to COVID?
There are regular scheduled vaccinations that go on every year. Those would proceed. I know there are also vaccination clinics that go on within individual schools that get coordinated for the teachers and the staff. So I suspect that all of those things will go forward. Anything beyond that, I haven't been involved in those conversations. I think it would be a good thing to follow up. We've got Dr. Russell on a couple of other venues, I believe another one tomorrow, so it may be good to pose that question as to where they are with their planning on that topic.
Thank you, George. Marcel?
Oui, merci pour la question. Les cliniques habituelles de vaccination devraient continuer comme prévu. Par contre, ce qu'on veut indiquer, c'est que même si les écoles commencent puis que la rentrée se fait la semaine prochaine, la collaboration puis la veille ou la surveillance continue de ce qui se passe dans les écoles va définitivement continuer. Et on va, avec le ministère de la Santé, continuer à fournir de l'information pour que les gens comprennent ce qui va se passer puis à quel moment ça se passera.
Merci, Marcel. Callum Smith, Global News. Your first question, please.
Thank you. I want to go off a bit off course from back to school for 1 second. Speak of the new K-8 school in Moncton, just because there's some details that I was missing from a department spokesperson. They confirmed that money was set aside in the budget for planning and design, but in an email today didn't provide a location. Has the location for the new K-8 school in Moncton been determined? And if so, how do you explain that choice to parents?
Thanks, Calum. Yes, you are right that in the 2021 capital budget, we have announced a new K-8 school in Moncton. It's to replace Besborough and Hillcrest schools. Each and every year we go through the process where school districts evaluate their needs, and they look at the demographics and age and put in the request through infrastructure. And then we have a process called the QBL that we go through to have those decisions made. That process was followed through for the identification of the new Besborough Hillcrest replacement school. We are in the preliminary planning and underway discussions with the City of Moncton and the school district on the final location of the school. And if you're looking for more details on how those locations are actually selected, I'd refer you to back to the Education Act, and we can connect with you via email if you're having trouble locating that, and you can refer to that to get the process.
Thank you, George. Callum, do you have a second question or a follow-up?
Yeah, just on that note, and I thank you for the answer, Deputy Minister. So the decision, I was under the impression from the District Education Council that the decision has been finalized. Is that not correct? Is it not at this point going on the site of Bernice McNaughton, or is that the intention and it just hasn't been finalized yet? We're just looking for clarity on that.
Yeah, I'll give you clarity. We are still in conversations with the City of Moncton and the school district, and that will continue. Once we have a minister back in the seat, that would probably be another follow-up question that you should probably pose to the new minister.
Thank you, George. This concludes our regularly scheduled updates, and we will continue to work with schools and school districts to keep families informed throughout the coming year. Thank you and have a great school year. Ceci conclut nos mises à jour régulières. Nous continuerons à travailler avec les écoles et les districts scolaires et à tenir les familles informées tout au long de l'année scolaire. Merci et bonne année scolaire.